Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we have got a couple of people that they were so great on our podcasts, weren't they?
Absolutely, yes.
And so we are so excited. We were invited them to come to New York to do our TV show because they were so awesome and so inspiring. And we love hope, inspiration, and they're certainly it. Do you want to introduce them?
They are, Mom. And you know, it's a tough topic because it's coping with traumatic loss. And so our guests today have had sudden traumatic losses in their lives. And we were just talking before the show about how they've gone from being in the dark back into the light again. And they're going to talk to us about how they did it and how everybody else out there can too. Our guests are Dr. Alycia Marshall and David Conley. Hello.
Hi.
And let me start with Alycia. Dr. Alycia Marshall's 19-year-old son and only child died in a car accident in 2016.
Wow.
So not too long ago.
Right.
She is the Associate Vice President for Learning and Academic Affairs at Anne Arundel Community College. And she's also involved in TCF, the Compassionate Friends, and BP USA, which is Bereaved Parents USA. And David Conley lost his wife suddenly after she stopped breathing in 2011. And after that, he lost 150 pounds. And if you go to his website, you will see that he says, "My life blew up in 2011." And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of us. It's like all of a sudden our life blows up. And he meant in many ways. So his life blew up. He was over 300 pounds. And as I said, he lost 150 pounds.
Wow.
And today he is a health and wellness coach. And we will talk to you about how he did it and how you can get a hold of him if you need to do it as well.
Absolutely.
So welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Alycia, you were talking, I mean, I'll have to say that we've got to put a little plug in for Open to Hope because you were talking earlier.
Yeah.
Tell us about listening to our shows.
What I was referring to was in the first few weeks and months when I came back to work, because we all know that you have a significant loss, your child, your spouse, your parent, and you still at some point have to go back to work. And what got me through those early days was actually at lunchtime I would go to your website and I would scroll through the topics and pick something that I thought would be helpful to me, and I would watch your TV show. So it's really exciting to be here in person today.
Oh, how wonderful. Well,
Yeah, and I was just saying, a lot of people watching are in the first 2 years of loss. And
Yes.
they need people like David and Alycia, they need to hold on to them as lifelines. Because you know what it's like early on with grief, you don't know how you're going to survive. And sometimes you're in bed and you feel like you're drowning. So, it's so important to have these voices here to tell us how they did it.
Yep. And can you tell us your story a bit about your son?
Yeah, well, my son was an amazing individual. He was very talented. He was a hip hop artist. So he was, kind of a personality. He was bigger than life. And not only just for me as his mom, but he had fans and he was doing videos. And so, everybody kind of knew who he was. And it was very difficult for this, kind of the center of the family. He was the youngest grandchild, child, everything. Everything was kind of wrapped around him to support him in what he was trying to do. For him to disappear suddenly, it was just a tremendous loss.
For not only your family, but for the community. He wrote a lot of songs.
He wrote over 500 songs.
I thought I remember that on
Yes.
the podcast. Over 500 songs and had thousands and thousands of fans.
Incredible.
Yes.
And he was in an automobile accident?
Yes, he was actually attending classes at Anne Arundel Community College. He had completed most of his coursework. He had just transferred to Howard, and he was picking up a couple classes, and he was on his way, and it was a bright sunny day, and we think he fell asleep at the wheel. He was a person, a night owl. He stayed up late. He used to write lyrics for his songs. I mean, that's like what he did every day of his life. And he went off the side of the road. He was killed instantly. So there was no warning. I went in his room that morning. I said, he's okay. And I went to work. And I never imagined that that would be the last time that I would see my son alive. So it was quite traumatic and sudden.
Right, right. And because my son was killed and Heidi's brother was killed in a sudden accident. And I don't know for you then, but there's not a lot of support for you. It's not like hospice and, you've got all these, there's just like, you didn't even go to the hospital to find out about a group, or it's just like,
One day you have a child, and
Yeah.
the next day you don't.
yeah.
And there's nothing that really can prepare you for that, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to, what I did was focus on the positive, and people say, well, what's the positive? I focused on what I needed to do for myself. I was early on accepting of the fact that he was somewhere, and I'm a Christian, so I believed he was with God, and I kept repeating that to myself every time I thought about that he was, maybe hurt, or what was he doing during the accident, or did he know what was happening? There's all these negative thoughts surrounding a person's death that we think about. I kept saying, he's okay now, he's with God. I need to focus on how I'm going to live the rest of my life without him, because I'm suffering.
Right.
And that took a lot of the pressure off of what do I do as a parent for my child. My child is taken care of. I need to take care of myself and get through the grief part of it.
Wow, yeah. Well, David, now you came home and your wife was on the couch. Did I remember that? And you talk about that.
Yeah.
And how long have you been married? And
we'd been married 13 years, and she passed 8 years ago. She was on the couch sick, which was unusual. She was one of those people where, like even when you're under the weather, they're just still moving, but just a little bit slower. And I came home that day and she was still on the couch, and I called a friend and they said, look, something serious might be happening. Why don't you get her to the hospital? And so we went to the hospital and they checked her out, and she seemed okay, just trouble breathing. And they put a tube in her, and that night fell asleep beside her in the bed, and just awoke to alarms going off and them rushing her gurney down the hallway.
Oh my God.
And it was just doctors aren't really allowed to say, I'm sorry.
Right. They're worried about lawsuits. And also, my mom and I were saying, they're in the business of keeping people alive.
Yeah. The doctor said, she said to me, I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah.
They had only seen this, and this was a large hospital outside of Washington, D.C. They see 100,000 people a year, and they had only seen what happened once in 15 years.
Wow.
She was the second.
And what happened? They just said she stopped breathing?
She had psoriasis, which is, it's an autoimmune condition, but it looks like red scaliness
Yes,
around.
I know what that is.
Yeah. And when they put the tube in her, it started just a cascade of events where she started hypercoagulating. And that caused a stroke and then another one. And within 3 days, I turned off the life support.
And how old was she? She was in her 30s, wasn't she?
She was in her 40s.
Okay. I remember she was young.
She was young.
Yeah. Traumatic, and turning off the life support. Wow. That's really. Now, I wanted to. You found Compassionate Friends. You were involved with them. What did you find? I mean, how did you? You were working. You went right back to work.
Yeah, well, I had about a month off.
Okay, a month off.
And that was generous.
Did the college support you?
Yes, they asked for an emergency leave, so typically it's a week, but they can ask for an emergency leave under extenuating circumstances, and that's what they did for me, and that was really helpful. But you still have to go back, and I was in a management position, which means a lot of work and other people depending on you and things that need to be done. So it wasn't a go back to work and ease back in type of situation. It was really go back to work. I have to say, because Aaron had attended Anne Arundel Community College, I had a lot of support and people that knew him and knew me. So that was a different going back to work situation than I think most people have. So I could actually talk about him, and people were very sad, which is, a positive and a negative, right?
They knew him. Yeah.
And they were sad for me, but in addition to that, they were sad because they had lost him. So that actually made it difficult. On some level, it was good because I had people I could talk to and share a story, and they said, yeah, I remember when Aaron did this and that was wonderful. On the other side, though, I could be having a great day, and I would walk into someone who's bursting into tears when they see me, because so that was difficult to manage that piece of it.
Because then you felt like you had to take care of them?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And work is a place that I enjoy, and I really compartmentalized. So when I was at work, I said, let me be at work and let me do work. And I would look at his picture occasionally, but I would go back, okay, I got to finish this report. And it was very helpful. But when you start overlapping that with, somebody that says, oh, let's go somewhere and cry right now. And I'm like, no, I have,
you don't want to go there.
That's after work hours,
Right.
so it was challenging.
And I think some people don't understand that. when we have someone that's so close to us that dies, the reason sometimes we don't look like we are impacted in public is because we don't want to go there. Because it's going to open up a floodgate of Niagara Falls tears. That's why we might look like we're holding it together.
It's definitely true. And you can kind of focus on something else for a while, which is actually a good thing sometimes.
Right. And David, what comes up with you about all this? Do you resonate with some of this, or
Which part?
The working?
Yes, the working and the you know,
Kind
trying
of
to keep it
holding
together. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I was a senior executive with the government at the time. I had come from private industry and joined a large agency in Washington, D.C. And I was fortunate enough to have some time and to take some time and to sort of ease back into work. That was pretty necessary, because even if I was there, I wasn't really there.
Right.
And certainly keeping it together, and people that are in the throes of this and don't maybe not have a lot of experience with it, you will just be emotional. You will just be emotional out of nowhere, and it will just happen. And yeah, so definitely resonate with
And you
that.
were 330 pounds.
Oh, yes.
And were you
Yeah.
eating, did you find yourself eating comfort food after loss? Or
You
at what
were that
point-
before your wife died, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I was,
so
At what point did you say, okay, this is serious, this is going to be hazardous to my health, and I might die also? I don't know if that happened. How did you go from
Yeah, what was your
330
turning point?
to 150? Yes, thank you, Mom. That's what I want to know. Ask that question again.
yeah, what was your turning point? And did your wife's death impact your
Yes.
turning point?
It did, in the sense that I think it happened at the time and it made me notice. And the piece that it made me notice, and the piece that I bring forward today, is that I have choice. When I was in the depths of grief, when I was on the ground, I stopped eating. I stopped drinking water. I stopped sleeping. I stopped working. So all of my major pieces of my life stopped.
Right.
And I had to very, very consciously think about what to do next. I wasn't thirsty. And when you're not thirsty, you have to think, oh, you know what? I have to drink water. Like, okay. And that was the smallest bit of self-care that I could do. So I started by drinking water.
I love that. When you, I have to stop and say that, and probably you felt the same way about drinking water. Some of the things I say to people is drink water.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and not alcohol. You know, drink water, go for a walk, you know.
To your
if you can.
point, when the trooper came to my house, that's the first thing that I did. I did not cry. I hugged my mom and I said, he's with God. And I was thirsty and I kept drinking water. I just felt like I didn't get enough water. So that's an interesting thing. And then in about 2 weeks, I work out a lot, and that helps me with endorphins and mood.
Right.
And 2 weeks from the day he passed away, I was back in the gym with my trainer. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
Every song that came on, I was thinking about him and I wanted to cry, and I said, you're in the gym, you can't do ab work while you're crying. People are gonna look at you funny, and I pushed myself through it, but those things kind of helped. I had control over that. I thought about that and I said, I didn't have control over how I lost him,
Right.
but I did have control about how I was moving forward and whether or not I was going to continue working out, whether or not I was going to drink water. So it's kind of similar to what you were talking
It is, because
about.
David all of a sudden decided, I don't know if it was all of a sudden, but eventually decided I need to take control of my health, and I need to start exercising. Is that fair to say, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was that small bit of self-care, the drinking
Yeah.
of water. It started a cascade from my own cascade, which was realizing that I had that choice, and I had to choose. So much of my behavior, whether it was eating or exercising or working or moving or whatever, because it felt so much out of control for me and so unconscious, having to really bring this to consciousness and say, I need to choose to do this, changed a lot for me. Realizing that I always had that choice. Starting with the water, and then starting to eat a little, starting to choose to eat differently, starting to move a little. Those were all of the smallest bits of self-care that I could do.
Did you have somebody helping you, or did you do this on your own?
I didn't, and that's where I believe that I have such a calling in my job. I was a senior technology executive, and now I'm a health and wellness coach.
And you could have her as your poster child, couldn't you? This is what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a calling for you now to do this and
to say that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of your work is, and certainly the work that we do for ourselves is that realizing that we're just not alone in this.
And the interesting part is that often what I see is that when people have had a loss, they gain a lot of weight. And people talk about carrying the weight of grief, and they eat a lot of comfort foods, and they stop working out.
Yeah.
And they get in a bad physical situation. So
That's the difference between self-care and self-soothing. So the work of drinking water, exercise, eating well, sleep, that's all self-care. Self-soothing is there to help you feel better or to feel anything. So much, particularly in my first 2 years, was just wanting to feel. And so feeling something by eating anything was really the beginning.
And I would argue that working out and the endorphins does make you feel better. So it's kind of you make a choice as to whether, having something that's really a comfort food would make you feel better.
Yeah.
But also, if you can get over the hump to the point about yoga and all of that, that can also make you feel better, and it's actually good for you, for your body.
Now, I wanted to ask you about organizations, because I know I had talked to you about Soaring Spirits Foundation,
Yes.
Michelle Neff Hernandez, and Michelle has this fabulous organization. Love that woman. Her husband died a few years ago, and she started Soaring Spirits, and it's just gone. She has 3 workshop, 3 retreat weekends. We're going to San Diego this year and do video, but she's got a lot of women coming, and so you're doing the group process. You've heard about it, and you're going to be doing some things with Michelle, right?
I certainly believe I am. She's doing this several times a year. I may or may not be in San Diego. I'll see if I can fit it in my schedule. I am on the West Coast.
But have you been on her website and done Camp Widow or anything?
I see it, and it's amazing. What excites me, what really is amazing about this is that I didn't feel like any of this was around 8 years ago. Maybe it was, but I couldn't find it. And that it's here today is magic. That's amazing.
So you just go on the web and find Soaring Spirits Foundation.
And I love it because a lot of the widows and widowers are younger, like you, David, and to be, somebody that's not 90 years old as a widow, sometimes you do feel like there's nobody out there and there's nothing out there. It's like, wait a minute, I kind of don't even identify with that word, and I'm trying to find a group that can identify with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Alycia, you've done Bereaved Parents and Compassionate Friends.
Both, yes.
And Alive Alone.
Yes.
Because he was your only child, right?
Yes, he was. And so I was talking to one of the guests earlier in that when I lost Aaron, I knew that I needed help and support. So I immediately went to the internet, and that's how I found you guys. And I found the Compassionate Friends, and I had gone to a grief support group through a church, and they really didn't know what to do with me. They were all widowers, people who had been with their spouses for 50 plus years. They were hurting, but when they heard the story about this 19-year-old kid that was killed immediately in a car accident, the horrified look on their face, and they really didn't know what to do. And I said, Mom, we need to find a place where there's other people that have lost children, because that's kind of where we're going to get the support that we need. And I found the Compassionate Friends and Bereaved Parent USA, and they have been a lifeline for me. And what I get out of them now is I still attend groups, but it helps me to help other people. So I go there not necessarily seeking all of the help for myself, but what I feel is a positive feeling after I'm there and I'm able to help another newly bereaved parent who walks in the door. And I know you guys heard this before, how it's so healing to be able to help other people.
Well, the thing is, none of us want to be victims. We want to find meaning. We want to empower, and helping other people empowers you. And it's, I want to say it's so easy, really. to just be there for other people. You know, if you're in the right space, you know, going to Compassionate Friends, you can always find somebody who's earlier on in their loss than you are, or you can go to Soaring Spirits and find somebody who's earlier in their loss. And honestly, I just think having people like you sit here and talk, and I mean, I just know there are so many people who are saying, hey, I can do it, you know.
And saying they get it.
Yeah.
They get what I'm dealing with, because what they're saying, they're you know, watching this going, yes, yes, that's me, or that was me.
And the normal side of it too.
Yeah.
We always, you know, it's normal to hurt, to be in pain, to, you know, have these thoughts, to maybe gain weight or lose weight or try to find control, or, you know, and try to find that space. So before we get to the show, I want to find out where people will find you for your coaching.
You can reach me best at my website. It's Limitless, LIMITL.es, or davidcc.com. You can reach me there for coaching. I have just a few clients, or my book, or
tell us what your book is.
It's coming, so come to the website. I want you to take a look and see what's going on.
Okay.
And what's it going to be called?
Habit Hijack.
That's nice.
I like that.
Habit hijack. I like that name.
Habit Hijack.
And I know there are a lot of people
speaking.
who are interested in losing, have gained weight after a loss,
Yes.
and having you help them out would be a wonderful thing. Now, do you have a website you want us to go to, or tell us about your son's website?
Yeah,
I know
so-
he's got fabulous stuff on it.
I don't have a website, but I am working on a book, so that's to be determined. But he can be found if you go to Star Life at 301 on Twitter, or you can search for him on YouTube at AG Star Life or Star Life AG. Star Life was the group that he was a member of, and all of his songs can be found on spinrilla.com if you search for AG. That was his. That was his name, his artist name.
Love it.
So fantastic. Well, if you had some advice for somebody who's lost a child recently, what would it be?
I would say one day at a time. I would say give yourself a break and not try to live up to other people's expectations. You have to do what feels good to you. I would say to focus on yourself and self-healing and self-care, and think about the good times that you had with your child. I know that's very difficult to do at that time, but it is something that is a gift to have had a child for as many years as you had that child, and to be able to think about what they have done in your life and that opportunity as a positive and not always as a negative. So I would definitely say that, and I would also encourage them to write in a journal if they want to write about their thoughts and communicate their thoughts, and to seek support either through grief counseling, definitely through grief support groups, and particularly bereaved parent support groups.
I love it. I love it. When I'm hearing you saying that, I'm thinking of me, Heidi. I actually worked as a therapist in a hospital, but still, I would today, if my son was killed today, I would be thinking, wow, I could actually get this support out there in different areas, and journaling and doing groups. Really, really cool. And what would be your advice if somebody's lost a spouse recently?
So much of the recent feelings are feeling like this is happening to you. And now I know that so much happened for me. And that realization changed a lot, and just, it made all the difference in the world.
That whole different narrative, a different way of looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
that's big.
transformed my life. I lost the weight. I am certainly alive today because Carol passed.
Wow.
Without a doubt. And so knowing that that was for me is...
She inspired you to do all this. Her memory, the loss of Carol.
A gift, not the loss, but a gift.
Well, one thing that Heidi and I have talked about, if you've ever heard any of our shows on post-traumatic growth, and it's really hard for people to hear this early on.
Right.
But there is something about growing through these experiences, even though we certainly wouldn't choose them, we wouldn't have them again, but, you know,
Well, to your point, I feel that I can help other bereaved parents, and I would have never been able to do that if Aaron had not passed. And of course, I wish that he hadn't, but there's a gift to that, and there's something that I can do as a result of that is a positive thing that's positively impacting other people. And so definitely agree with that.
Well, I hope one thing, I know you two are both writers, so you're writing books, so I hope you will be our Open to Hope writers. And come and write for Open to Hope and give us articles. You know, we have about 5,000 articles online. They've all been vetted, and we would love to have you join us. And then when your books are done, we'll put them on our book site so that everybody can get more familiar with you and benefit from your wisdom.
Wow, Mom, that's really putting him on the spot.
We didn't see that coming.
Well, you never know. And other people who are watching this, you were talking about journaling, which we've had a lot of people talk about how important journaling is and writing down your stories. And everybody wants to hear those stories.
Absolutely.
They wanted to hear your story just today. It's important to them, the fact that you've had sudden loss, that you're up, moving, walking, talking. I can do that too.
Right, and not only that, because that's probably how they started, but now being having a significant impact on the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it transcends and our losses transform and transcend and change and evolve.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you all for watching this show today and listening to it. And Heidi and I and our guests always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. And God bless.
I must have had my head in the clouds, cause I've been dreaming about this too long. Thinking about this every day, writing a new song. Improve my skills, swagger ill, trying to go hard. That's that food for thought, and so they wonder why the food is gone. My mind state is in the future, always moving on. They say I'm on point, something like a unicorn. I'm trying to make my money stupid long. Stretch it just like Stretch Armstrong. I bring the heat like LeBron Braun. Call it the Bang Way, we ain't on the same page. I hear what you get in 20 years and 8 days. Shout out to Breezy, I make rapping look easy, cause I be speeding, flow so cold it gives in the heebie-jeebies. Man, it's a cold world, a cold world. I'm speaking to the whole world, but you the one I wanna get to know, girl. And talk to you, come and listen to my flow. Girl, judging by my pockets, know I'm all about the dough. Girl, it's nothing, why you frontin'? Cause it's nothing, don't you see the way I'm stuntin'? Like it's nothing, why you judging? I always keep it 100, my swagger, I know you want it. Cause it's nothing, why you frontin'? Cause it's nothing, don't you see the way I'm stuntin'? Like it's nothing, why you judging? I always keep it 100, my swagger, I know you want it. Cause it's nothing. Ahead of my time, it shows with these flows. All my Jordans match my clothes, swear my swagger only grows over time. I'm in that state of mind where I can't be stopped. If a boy gon' drop, then I drop to the top. Spit that fire, 'cause it's just that hot.